And we'll start off. I'm going to do it randomly today, so you'll never have any idea who's up next. But I'm going to pick Devin Carter first. Devin, are you here? Oh dear, I picked somebody who wasn't here. Okay.
Off to a great start.
Yeah. Peter Kluke, how about you? Or you here? Yeah, you are. Go ahead. Peter?
He's trying.
There you go.
We can't hear you yet, Peter.
The icon's gone, so.
Yet again, off to a great start.
Apon, you're here. Donato, tell us something.
All right.
I'll come back to you.
Let me share my screen here. Okay. So I have a couple bugs, but I got a little bit of progress as well. I'm doing the dungeon crawler game, the one that's like turn-based. A couple things I wanted to get done I got done is if I go to my scenes here and go to my map, if I actually press play here, and then let me just make sure it's all set. Let me just reset the map so you can see this. Nope, that's not it. So I made it so if you actually click this, it should put you into the combat, which is really cool. I just quickly did that because I wanted to make sure that map itself worked. That was like one of the few things I wanted to get done. I also did create a random enemy spawner. I'm not sure if I showed that last time. But I made it so now it spawns in a random amount of enemies from 1 to 3 because I wanted to make it so it's not always 3 enemies. That would be kind of tough. Right now I have 3 different enemy types as the minor enemies that you can encounter. One of my issues though, you may have saw it there, is that for some reason, like 2 of my pixel arts I've seen so far, I haven't tested 2 of them, but 2 of them so far have had an issue when they get spawned in. They're way lower down than the other 2. So in this case, the zombie here is, if he spawns in and he spawns next to something else, there's a zombie, he's way lower. The other guys all spawn higher up. For some reason, I have no idea why, and I still gotta figure it out. But if it spawns in, so you can see like the wizard here, he's fine. And I sliced it differently. Like I tried changing the frames up. I have no idea why it keeps doing this. It's the same thing for my a different enemy I have that I decided to change to be a more tougher enemy, the snake guy. They spawn just higher up for some reason, and there's no, I'm not sure. I don't know. So that was one thing I had to figure
Can you
out.
see where the center pivot is of the object?
I don't know how, but I can check. Let me. Where would I see this to adjust that?
I'm not. I don't know too much about the 2D world, but this is an object, right?
Right.
Forrest is saying to look in the sprite editor. Is it?
Yeah, I could check there actually. Hold on. If I go to my my sprites here, and I'll just grab the zombie because that's the one we saw. When I went to the sprite editor, I don't know if you guys can see this. For this one, and it's the same for all the others, I have them sliced by cell count. So for this one, this was cell count. I think it got changed. Maybe I didn't apply it. Maybe that's why. But if I make it 3 by 3, it slices. It's the same thing, and I can apply it. It's still that. So I'm not really sure. I think I just have to mess around with it more. It's
so
not like
down there. There's a position 0 and 128 and 64 by 64. I don't know.
Yeah, I have to definitely check it out.
I've never played with sprite characters in 2D, so I have no idea.
I think it's not like a major issue though.
Somebody else who has experience with 2D stuff? Anyone? No? Okay, go ahead, continue your report.
Yeah, so I got that done. I also messed around a little bit more with my players' abilities. I wanted to, some of them don't work, some of them do, but a lot of my player abilities originally weren't working as well as I thought they could have. So, for example, I hope it works when I show it off, but I added in a buff ability. So for this one, you can select a character with the thick hide ability, and that gives them increased armor until they get hit again. Then it goes back to their default, which is cool. I pretty sure it works, but it might glitch out. I've had it a couple times where it glitched out, and it makes it so then the character just can't do anything because it changes their state from being able to attack to them just standing there trying to attack for some reason. But I think I fixed it. Same thing with my healing. I made a heal ability on this guy so you could just target someone and it heals it. I tried to, oh wait, that's not the right one. Here we go. Where is he? There it is. So right here I have a ranged heal. Just heals them for a value of 6. It costs 4 ability points to use. I tried to then add an AoE ability, so targets multiple targets at once, but I've had issues with that, and I think that's just because the way I set up my targeting system. I haven't been able to fix it yet, but I mean, I just thought of doing that yesterday, so that's probably why. But that's pretty much the main things. I do want to quickly show if I hope they work, the new abilities I added in. So yeah, you can see right here this guy has spawned lower than the others. It's yeah, but if I get this charged up here, I'm gonna wait for one of them that actually can do the buff ability, which is the last one. I probably should have made him faster. If I use him and select this character, I can then use the thick hide. So now his armor went up to 7, which is now temporarily blue. And hopefully, if one of the enemies do hit him, he will actually lose that armor, but it looks like it's random. I didn't actually set this up as the test scene I had before, which was just one character. But as you can see, this guy's taking a lot of damage here, so I can select Kepri, who has a heal ability, select my teammate, and do lesser heal. And his health did go up, but he immediately got hit again. So let me see. So he's at 20 right now. I should be able to heal him again once I get back up to full speed. But it looks like it glitched the game. So that was the issue. Every now and then it would glitch the game, where for some reason everyone's just stuck at trying to attack. And I think that's just a matter of me controlling the states that they're in. Because the way that my system's set up, it's more set up for damaging than healing. So it sets them so they're just in this permanent state of waiting for the next attack to go through. But it's just a weird bugs I just got to figure out. That's mostly what I've had this week was just bugs.
Bugs. Yep.
That's pretty much it.
Okay. Any questions, comments, suggestions for Donato? Unshared, Don. Okay.
One small question. Shoot, what was the question? The enemies, are they going to have, I guess the attacks are going to be random?
Yeah, right now they're set to basic random attacks, but I do want to make it so they're a bit more advanced and they have abilities than just straight up damage. I might end up doing that once I get to the boss because I obviously want the boss to be more dynamic than that.
I guess what I was asking is like, are you going to make it where they're sort of smart and they'll try to focus their attacks on one person and knock out one person completely? Or are you just going to have who they attack random?
I haven't, I mean, I think it would be better off if they were smarter. I'm not that great at AI, so I haven't done that yet, but that would be cool to have. I'd like to do that.
Yeah, I was just going to be like, hey, they have a smaller health. Let's attack them. That was
Yeah,
the
like
extent of
whoever.
that AI.
Yeah, and the only problem I'm worried about that is like it's just gonna be random the first person they hit, and then since they have lower health, they're just gonna keep hitting that one person.
Right.
So it's just gonna seem like they're hitting one person the whole time.
Yeah, it may not be the best, but I just didn't know if you were considering anything like that.
Yeah, I'd have to think about how I want to do it, and I think that would definitely be like a week's project by itself. So I might say that for when the whole combat system's done, and then I can adjust the AI based on that. Because I'm still thinking of like ideas like the buff ability that was supposed to work, which just thought of like earlier this week, and stuff like that. I think Forrest just said something about the AI. Lowest player with the lowest armor, player with the lowest max health, player with the lowest current health. Yeah, I just gotta figure it out mostly.
A lot of decisions to be made. And Forrest also said something about the pivot location is in the sprite editor. And again, I don't know anything about the sprite editor, so you can explore. Any other questions, comments, suggestions?
I have a question.
Go ahead, Dorothy.
Do you have any, like, if you beat a battle other than just getting to the next level, is there any, like, do you get like an experience boost? Do you get like new moves? Is there any like reward for, because I know you said also you can go back to levels and they'd be different. Is there a reason why you would want to do that?
So I'm basing off of this game where you get a currency. I'm just gonna make it just gold, and on the map, I don't know if it showed it on the random map, but there's gonna be these shops that you can go to, and I'm planning that you can use the gold to buy items to help you further progress. Because as you get further in, obviously it's gonna get more difficult. And there's not, I'm planning on making it so your health stays as it is after you finish the fight. So you're not gonna instantly go back to full after. After that fight, you have to have like you're at 10 health. You're gonna start the next fight with 10 health. I'd have to adjust the numbers obviously for balancing. Right now, I just picked random numbers that felt good, but you'll use whatever gold you get at the end of the fight to, if you can get to a shop, purchase like potions to heal you. Maybe I'll make like some buff potions to make you stronger, stuff like that. So hopefully that's enough like rewards. I might, if I have extra time, I can start thinking of other like things that you can get, but that was my basic idea.
No, that makes sense. I wasn't sure. I didn't know the coin thing.
Mhm.
Just didn't see there was a reason yet why you would want to go back and do other battles. But if you're getting like, let's say you need more of something to get through later, then you would go and get more money or whatever.
Right, yeah.
Do your characters die?
Yeah, right now,
And then,
obviously
like, you've got a team of people
right.
moving through the rooms, and as one dies, then you have like fewer on the team.
Yeah, I'm planning if one dies, that one's gone until like there was like a rest site location on the map, so I'm planning maybe making those you can choose to fully heal someone back, or maybe make it,
Resurrection, right?
yeah, like a resurrection or a small heal to everyone, like make it maybe a trade-off. So you're at least getting something even if you don't have someone dead. But that's more like numbers. I gotta figure out what feels better for balancing. But that's my plan for those little like rest stops, is like a sort of resurrection place.
Okay, cool.
This is Swift. In Slay the Spire, the first 3 hallway fights that you encounter on each floor are picked from a much easier pool. Do you have any plans to do anything like that to give people an easier start?
Yeah, it's actually really easy with. I put it on my progress report. This GitHub package for the map is like, he even has like the default ones pretty much 1-to-1 of like a Slay the Spire thing where you can say like this is always going to be this or this. This like the first layer is always going to be a minor encounter. The second layer is always going to be treasure or whatever. And so you can customize it anyway. It's just a great GitHub package. It's honestly
That's
better
awesome.
than like all of the other stuff I found.
Cool. Anything else? So who was it? Peter Kluke, I think. Have you fixed your sound yet? Go into audio settings of your Zoom and fiddle with the test your microphone or something like that. See, the sound level may be set all the way down, and go into system preferences and find your sound settings and turn them up. We'll come back to Peter. Carter show up? Nope. Will Howlett, you're here. Will, go ahead.
Well, I don't have too much to show again this week, but I'm working just with some, just in Unity. And just like I basically was just working a little bit this morning on like the really basic sort of like fundamentals of procedural generation, and I'm working on procedural generation. And yeah, so basically I've got two entities here, two states that are set up for a sphere and a plane, and both of which have scripts, just a basic Perlin noise script. Which, yeah, sets some variables. I can't remember, I think this is a Brackeys tutorial, but it sets basically some parameters to sort of like to work with. Then it gets the renderer, sort of assigns generate texture function to the renderer, and then it generates, uses a generate texture function to return a 2D texture. And then we loop basically. This is sort of where I get a little bit confused about what exactly is being looped, but there's a width and a height parameters, and we're looping and we're calculating color basically for every pixel, and then we're setting the pixels of the texture that we've gotten for each of those XY locations. We're setting the color, and then we apply that texture to whatever shape we're using, return the texture, etc. And then in order to calculate the color, basically we take the XY coordinates and we turn them into floats and apply some of our parameters, and then we, yeah, sorry, I'm just running this morning, so I'm not entirely sure on exactly how it works, because
You're generating texture in the update function, so this is making the texture every frame?
yes.
And is that necessary, or would you do that in the start function instead? I mean,
Probably a start
that seems
function.
like a lot of work for every frame to generate texture.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's an n squared thing. I mean, that's a
Okay.
doubly nested loop. So that, okay. So, and this texture that you're making, I assume calculate color is the thing that's sampling the Perlin world.
Yeah.
And making the grayscale image. And then you're mapping that onto a sphere. Have you run into issues with the UV coordinates on a sphere with funny things going on at the poles?
Yes.
Because you're mapping a rectangle onto a sphere, which
Yeah.
always involves a certain level of distortion.
Yeah.
And at some point, you're going to make bumps out of this too, right? I mean, you're
Yes.
going to start fiddling with the mesh, and with the sphere, I forget which. There's the basic sphere that has one checkerboard of triangles that may or may not be the best grid of particles. I think it might be a latitude longitude kind of checkerboard that wraps around the planet. I forget now. I'd have to look at a basic sphere. But the ProBuilder sphere is a procedurally generated sphere that starts off with a tetrahedron and then subdivides surfaces and subdivides surfaces and subdivides surfaces. So you get a more regular mesh of triangles on the ProBuilder sphere. I think that's the one that does that. And you also have control in the ProBuilder with how many vertices there are. And so you can make a very finely resolved sphere And whereas the default sphere is just whatever you get. So you might have to look at ProBuilder to get a good sphere to map your bumps onto, because you're going to want to have sufficient resolution to capture the up and downness of your grayscale image there, right? And
what's ProBuilder?
ProBuilder's one of the packages you can get from the package manager, and it's kind of a half-assed version of Blender or one of the 3D content tools, and it has a lot more primitives than the basic building tools of Unity. Unity gives you spheres, cubes, cylinders, and capsules. ProBuilder gives you toruses and rings and circles and stairs and, just a lot of different primitives, all of which are procedurally generated so that you can make different settings that control how they look. Forrest is saying he used ProBuilder a bunch. There is on the 412 YouTube channel, there is a lecture on ProBuilder that I pre-recorded, so you can go have a look at that if you want to see what I present on ProBuilder. And on the Google Drive, there are sample game folders for ProBuilder and the notes and so forth. So you can have a look at them.
Okay.
It's worth looking at. If you need higher resolution on a sphere, that's the whole thing I'm talking about, is that the ProBuilder gives you control over the grid resolution, the number of triangles, which you may need to capture all those high resolution bumps that you've got there.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Anything else?
No, that's all.
Okay. Any questions, suggestions, comments for Mr. Hallett?
Yeah, Peter Kluge here. So do you think you might end up like doing anything with like physics? Because you're building like planets and stuff, right?
I don't know. I mean, I maybe I've looked at the spherical gravity tutorial from last year's class, and that would be something cool, I think. But I don't.
It is cool. You can jump from one planet to another. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah, just thinking like you could nudge, like throw asteroids at other people's planets or things like that. I don't know. It'd be a fun opportunity to play around with that.
That would be cool. I did see very briefly a deformation tutorial, and yeah, something about yeah. I guess you'd have to work with physics for that, I think.
Yeah, you can. Once you make your bumpy planet grid, you can then go in and make the surface undulate so that it, plate tectonics. Any other comments, questions, suggestions for Will? All right, well, keep struggling. Bracky goes fast. He does a lot of stuff in a 10-minute video, so
Yeah.
you have to watch him like 5 times to really really get it. Any other questions, comments, suggestions? Peter, are you now ready with your sound? How's it going?
Yes, I am ready.
Okay, here we go.
Unfortunately, I don't think I can present anything because I'm on my laptop right now.
Yeah.
But I can give you just a brief description of what I've been doing this past week. So I did get the nav mesh built at runtime. So I did figure that out finally. It actually was pretty easy. I managed to set that up pretty well. I guess I've been mostly just working on like bugs and things. My object placer script, which I showed off last class, it was placing things in the water. So you'd walk around and you'd see like trees underwater and stuff like that. So I basically added a floor variable as well. So basically it would place objects between the floor Y value and the ceiling Y value. So you could kind of like change those to have certain elevation bands of objects, if that makes sense.
The object placer was doing a ray cast down, right? To figure out where the surface was.
well, basically what it's doing is accessing the terrain object and then calculating the Y value at a certain X and Y coordinate.
Okay.
So I think it might have been using a raycast or it was something like that. Yeah.
Because if you're doing a raycast, you can always see if there's water between you and the terrain. And if there is,
Yeah. Well, a really easy fix that I did was basically just have the floor be the sea level. So basically there's a constant sea level. I'll just make sure that no objects are placed below sea level.
that's a good idea.
Another bug that I ran into is that the object cluster placer, it wasn't counting the objects correctly, so it basically run out of like clusters much more quickly than I originally thought. So I got that all figured out. It's now producing like little clumps of objects, so like little clumps of ferns or palm trees or things like that. Let's see, I added like a sand texture to go with the water, tidal erosion to go with the water from the terrain toolkit, and snow that goes on the top of the mountains.
Cool.
So that's pretty much all that's all my progress for this week.
Okay, well, that sounds good. Any comments, questions, suggestions for Peter, whose sound is finally working?
I have a question. I forgot. What was the game that you were making again?
Yeah, it's basically just a survival explorer game. It's procedurally generated though, so like every time you play it, it'll be a different kind of map.
You're using the terrain toolkit API, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. So we played with the terrain toolkit in class, but we did it where you'd press buttons and make a terrain. But the terrain toolkit has a completely program accessible API that you can, do a Perlin terrain and put on top of that a fractal terrain and then texture it with as many textures as you're allowed to, and all procedurally. It's quite cool. Okay. Any other questions, comments, suggestions? All right. How about David DeFrumolo? Are you ready to present?
Yep. Fortunately, I'm on my phone right now because my laptop is not in my apartment. But
Where is it?
It's at my friend's apartment from last night, and I forgot to take it back with me. So,
Okay.
In the last week, I was trying to work on kind of making the map whole. So basically what I wanted to get done was setting up the colliders to get it to go to different scenes. So basically different rooms. I think I got that mostly working just by walking into doorways that I have. All the doorways are sprites and it's pretty easy to set them up like that. But what I want you to be able to walk in front of something and not enter a room. So I still need to make it. I think what I'm just going to have it as like the up arrow key, and for a second they'll look towards the entranceway and then they'll go into a different room, or however, walk in a door. And
So
maybe if I have a,
it won't always be exiting left and right. You'll actually have doors in the wall that you can go through.
Yep, there's a couple of them. I know one of the hallways I have, there's going to be like 3 or 4 different rooms that you can go in, and then you can go left or right to either go to a secondary room or an extension of the hallway. But that's what I got done. I also do a little more additional stuff with adding in dialogues, and I still want to come up with a couple more missions down the road. I don't know what I will be able to do for that. I'm still thinking about it, but yeah, that's mostly what I've got going so far.
Okay. Any comments, questions, suggestions for David? Yours was, I'm a little confused. What was you? Were you the? You're not the fraternity house. You're the.
Yep.
You are the fraternity house.
Yep.
Okay. Missions. You're going to have missions in the fraternity house.
I'm trying to aim for that.
Find the beer, right?
Yeah, it's either like look for my clothes or stuff. So simple stuff that'll be more mundane than just talking to somebody. But you know,
I
you maybe
love it.
go outside, find something.
There's so many fighting slasher games where you're battling big bosses and you're looking for your clothes. That's great.
It's more to like get people to discover the world a little more, maybe meet somebody else in the map. That's more what they'll be for. But yeah, I want to add a little like something in there for that.
Okay, cool.
That certainly could add some interesting dialogue if you bring somebody like something bad and then they give you a bad dialogue situation.
Oh yeah.
Like,
I
that's
got
not my
ideas.
underwear. What are you doing?
There's got to be a drunk fraternity brother somewhere too, right?
I mean, I could just make all of them that.
Okay. All right. Well, any other comments, questions, suggestions? In chat, Matt says he used ProBuilder because ProBuilder handles vertices properly so you can put material on the faces. Yeah, ProBuilder gives you all kinds of really detailed control over texturing. It's a TMO, too many options. Okay, so who have we got here? Still on first page, Spencer Campbell, how are you?
I have been struggling with the same thing that I was messing around with last week, and that is just trying to dig through this uncommented code and make it work for the random generation. I have the waypoints populating properly now. Now I just need to get the spawn point to generate properly. But basically, it's just digging through code.
What was the overall problem? I mean the project?
It was the random generated tower defense game.
Oh yeah, tower defense.
So I mean, really not much more to say than I've just been, slogging through the code. Haven't really made that many changes.
Okay, slogging through code. All right, duly noted. Any comments, questions, suggestions for Spencer? Keep slogging.
Well, I found out that there's a script execution order, so that helped out a little bit.
Oh yeah,
I didn't know
script
that existed
execution
before.
order. That'll kill you. Is this an issue with Awaken Start?
No, I thought it might have been, so I messed around with the execution order for a bit, but then that wasn't actually the issue. It was just, I really have no idea where it's going wrong right now. I mean, like I said, I got the waypoints to populate after I made the auto-generated path, but now I just need it to still have the spawn point not be destroyed. So I just got to find where exactly it's doing that, because there's a lot of functions that have just been obsoleted. I don't think this was an official Unity toolkit, but this is the toolkit I needed, so I can't switch over to the Unity one.
So you're not using Unity's tower defense toolkit?
No, I thought I might have been last time, but then I realized I actually decided on a different one, because the Unity toolkit just wasn't really what I was looking for. Like, it was nice for just standard tower defense games.
Yeah,
but it didn't.
It's more of a 3D game anyway.
Right.
All right. Well, I mean, this is the issue with Unity, is it's a moving target, and the only thing I could tell you is, I mean, whatever version of Unity this thing was designed for, you can still get on Unity. They have archives of all the old things going back, I think, even into Unity 5.
Well, everything's updated to the version that I'm on right now. I think I'm just on like the long-term support 2019, if I remember correctly. But so it's not. I don't think it's a Unity version error. It's just it wasn't really built entirely for the random. It's supposed to be all like pre-made. All of the objects are supposed to be already in the scene. But I'm adding objects programmatically as I make it generate.
Yeah.
So that's just, I just have to adapt it to that, which means I have to go through and change up all of their initiation code, which is kind of just all over the place. So.
I see what you mean. Yep. Okay. All right. Any suggestions, comments, questions for Spencer? Okay, and Devin's still not here. Abby, are you here? Yes, Abby.
Yes, I am. I can share screen. It's not terribly exciting. So I worked a little bit this week on getting the joystick to stop spinning, and I don't know what I did, but it did stop spinning. So I'll take full credit for it. Not sure what happened, but we're good now. Then I just kind of started messing with the terrain. Again, I didn't get a chance to work on it too much. A lot of it is also me trying to figure out how I wanted things scaled. So there's a lot of doing and redoing. So I just kind of have some basic paths here. I got a little tree. Again, nothing too much this week. Gonna crank away at it a bunch next week.
Cool. Well, way to go with the joystick.
Yeah, thanks.
You'll have to write down how you did that.
I have no clue, but do something.
That's funny. Who knows? Okay, any comments, questions, suggestions for Abby?
I have a question. Your screen there for a second showed that it was in portrait mode. Is that how you intend to play the game?
Yeah, because it's going to be on an iPhone. So, and I'll use the vertical orientation for that.
That's pretty cool. For some reason, I just assumed it was going to be horizontal, and then I just saw that. It's like, oh, wait a second.
Yeah, it's definitely a fun challenge to try to figure out, because again, just things that you're so used to seeing in a horizontal screen suddenly aren't visible on the same screen anymore. But also they will be easily still seen because I got the gyroscope working, so you'll be able to turn and see it. So that's kind of what I've been messing with, and that's why it's been taking me so long to figure out the scale and how wide to make the paths and all that stuff in the terrain. Because playing a game vertically it's different.
Yeah,
That's
it
cool.
sounds kind of refreshing.
Yeah, it's a little bit of a different challenge, so
And
I don't mind it.
so with the gyroscope, you'll just be able to turn the phone and it'll rotate your perspective in the game?
Yep.
That's so cool.
Yeah, and that part for sure works. When I added the joystick again, it's the joystick that's freaking things out a little bit. I still need to get some more functionality on that working, but before I added all that stuff, because it's all tied to the camera, but before I add that, the gyroscope does in fact work. So that's kind of cool to see.
And how well's the iPhone handling 3D graphics and textures and trees and stuff like that? Is it hiccuping?
Haven't tried too much yet. So far, no issues, but again, I have all of one tree so far, so we'll see what happens.
Cool. Yep. So Don says that Forrest's hint on the pivot location helped. Good. That's cool. Any comments, questions, suggestions for Abby? All right, next page. Mr. Howe, are you here? Andrew.
Hey, yeah. So this week I've been working on my enemy spawning on my game, which is 2D top-down dungeon crawler. So I've started adding my enemy spawner script onto all of my island prefabs. And then I've gone through creating empty game objects on every island prefab, and then set where, so that's where each enemy could spawn, and then it goes through and it selects. Right now I just have it splitting in half how many of those island prefabs. So like one island, for example, has like 10 game objects where enemies could spawn, and then it splits that into half. So it chooses 5 of those and places enemies there. And then it also chooses which enemy to place out of my character prefabs for enemies. One issue I'm running into right now has to do with enemies spawning on the same spot, but I don't think that should be too hard to fix. I just need to come up with something pretty much getting rid of that game object once an enemy spawns there. But that's what I've been working on this week.
Cool. Very good. You can always like divide your island up into a checkerboard grid and just keep track of what's in each checkerboard, in each space of the checkerboard, and not put 2 things in the same cell, so to speak.
Would that work with the enemies moving around once they're spawned in though?
Oh,
Because this going to be like live action combat, not unlike, well, yeah. But everything spawns in at the start function, on the start function, so no enemy should spawn after that. So I think that should work, right?
yeah, that should work. Once they start moving around, I don't know if they have colliders or how you're moving them around, but if they're aware of each other, they're not going to bump into each other.
Right.
And you're not nav meshing or anything fancy like that, right?
No, I wasn't planning on it.
Okay. Any questions, comments, suggestions for Andy? No? Peter, real.
Hi, Professor. Unfortunately, not too much progress this week. I traveled down to Connecticut for a job interview, and I also have been busy with my capstone group. So not too much work done this, not too much work was done this week, unfortunately.
Okay. Well, did you get the job?
They actually just sent me an offer today, but I'm not sure if I'm going to take it. I have another interview with a company on Monday.
It's a good,
which I didn't
good
think I was
business
gonna
we're
get.
in, huh? When you can turn down a job, right?
Yeah, it's actually a nice position to be in, I guess. But yeah, the work's fun. It's more of a testing job. I'd rather do like a development job. And Monday, I think, is looking good. So second interview with a company on Monday in Connecticut. So we'll see how that goes. But
Well, cool. Good luck with that. Okay.
Thank you.
So probably there aren't any comments or questions for Peter, except we're anxious to see cars driving around at some point. Miss Rumsey, Roshan, are you here? Yes.
Yes, I do have a bit of a demo today, but I have it on my phone here. So I got my maze working, and I'm not going to take you through the whole thing, but I'll show you. I got this little guy, and the circle's an enemy. So when you get close to him, my phone starts to vibrate,
I love it.
and then when you kind of back off, it stops. So I finally got that working. I'm very excited about it.
That's very
But,
cool. That's very
yeah.
cool.
Xcode got really weird, so it took quite a while to make that work. But I think I'm going to start focusing on the art of that now, so it's not just circles and squares. Not sure which direction I'm going to go with the style of art. So if anyone has any suggestions, I'd be happy to hear them.
There, she opened the floor for suggestions.
I was actually gonna ask what the art style was gonna be right before you said that. I don't know. This is very random, but it kind of is related to it. I played one time. I can't remember the game. It was some Mario game at my friend's house way back in the day, and it was like a Luigi's Mansion kind of thing where it was ghosts. And so I was thinking, like, as you got close to the ghost, the controller would vibrate. So that's when you know you were there because they were invisible otherwise unless like a light flashed. So that's immediately what I thought. I was making like a ghost themed thing instead for the art style. But that's all I got.
Is that on the Wii U?
Cool.
It was on the Wii U, but I
think-
didn't own it. It was my friends and we played it like once way back. I can't remember the name.
I think it's Luigi's Mansion.
It definitely was a Luigi's Mansion thing.
Okay,
But I
maybe-
don't know if it was like a main line or some spin-off mini, because it was like a mini game, so I don't know.
It was pretty fun. I do remember that game. I don't remember what it was called though.
You guys are funny.
That does sound cool, yeah.
The archaeology of computer games. Any other suggestions? Well, that's very cool. You've been fighting your way through one of the harder
Yeah.
things. And one of the things you've had to do is compile everything and load it into the phone. You couldn't use any of the remote tools or
Yeah,
any-
the haptics don't work on the Unity remote. So
Yeah.
I've been fighting with Xcode a lot, and it's very finicky. So I don't know. I know Abby's working on the iPhone thing there, so hopefully she doesn't have as many problems there.
Yeah, I'm hoping I end up getting it through Xcode. Right now, Unity Remote's working for me, but yeah, I might be reaching out to you at some point to figure out Xcode again.
Yeah, happy to help.
I think it's great what both of you are doing with the phone. That's so cool. All right.
I had one more question real quick.
Yeah, go ahead.
So was the goal of the game just like to navigate the maze, or were you going to attack the enemies, or were they going to attack you? Or just avoiding them?
I was just gonna have it navigate the maze. I have it so
Okay.
that when you get to the exit, it flashes that you made it through.
Gotcha.
I think maybe if we get to the point where the whole thing's done, I might make an attack feature, but
right now it's just avoid and
yeah,
make the maze. Gotcha.
Your advanced topic is very advanced, regardless what the final game. Understanding that we're building these different mechanics that can be incorporated in a long-term development process for a real game, and so that's really good. Okay, Elijah, why don't you go?
Awesome.
Oh, awesome.
Awesome sauce. So what are we doing here? So I was working on let's make it big. The ability to like rewind and stuff. So I just got it working, but I haven't like made it good. So, and I really want some UI for it because right now it's really hard to tell. So right now, if I hit R, I will start recording. So I hit R, and I'm just gonna check the cue. I'm gonna hit R again to stop recording, and then I hit F to rewind.
Oh.
So that's kind of cool. But like, I think if I hit R, I launch it, right? And then I stopped recording, and it's like I move it again. I think when I press play, it's gonna like teleport. Oh no, it didn't. Whoa. So I don't really know. I gotta figure out like, this is where I need to put a UI on so I can like help me debug and figure out what's happening. But like, I don't want people to be able to like, I don't want the box to like teleport around. Like when you pick it up, and it'd be good to know when I'm recording, when I'm not recording. See, like, I don't know what happened there. It just teleported. And I also don't want it to, like, I'm going to record. Hopefully I missed. Like, I don't know what's going to happen with the portals, like how, like it went back through the portal.
It did. It was fantastic.
But like, we've got a problem. I don't really know. So the question is, if I now make it go back, it like zips through, and I don't want it to like go back through where portal used to be. Yeah. So I'm gonna have to decide when I want to erase like the history of the recording, if that makes sense.
Yes.
Yeah.
Makes sense. So I think when I did the rewind time, if I recall correctly, I had scripts on the objects that I wanted to be able to rewind, and they just continually recorded the last 30 seconds of their life. And when you hit rewind, it would go back 30 seconds. So, and it was this continual first in, first out queue kind of thing, first in, last out kind of queue that, and it was some list structure that you could use that had things that came off one end and went on the other. And, but they just recorded continuously. They were always keeping track of where they were.
Yeah.
And it wasn't that big a overhead because you were only doing it every physics step instead of, that is so funny. Uh,
Oh, I killed the ball somehow. It died. I don't
ah,
know where. It fell to the void.
and that's a feature, not a bug, right?
Yeah. Yeah, so I just have to really get a grasp of what's happening with it and decide how I want it to play with each other.
Yep.
I also did some research on UI because that's the next thing, and it looks like I want to use the UI toolkit and the UI builder because that looks pretty cool for like, I don't remember how to open it. How do I open it? Can y'all see this? Like it kind of looks like the game. So this is kind of like, it looks pretty easy to like just drag in the elements you want and adjust them for the UI. So I think that may be something I want to use this because it seems more easy to use than the other UI.
This is
stuff.
a Unity package from the package manager,
Yeah, it's UI builder. I think it was
or is it? It's an asset store thing.
no, I got it from the package manager, but I
Okay.
had to do I think I had to do shoot, I had to hit like the preview packages. I think it was a preview, and it's only for like 2020. So I
Yeah.
think I had to upgrade as well.
Well, that's
so,
fun.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
anyways, I'm gonna try making like my own UI sprites and stuff to make it look good.
Cool.
So we'll see.
That sounds advanced.
Yeah, I'm hoping it isn't as advanced as it sounds. I'm hoping it's easy.
Well, anything that's powerful always has a lot of decisions to be made, you know, because if it's easy, there's not much you can do with it. If it can do a lot, then it's hard because you have to learn all the different things you can do with it, right?
Right.
Okay. Any comments, questions, suggestions for Mr. Story's
I realized
extremely
there's
successful portal system? Go ahead.
I realized there were some questions in chat. Can you
Oh.
just code it to delete the recording once the object is picked up? Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. Once I pick it up, I'm going to like access that object's list and wipe it. I think that should fix that. Just haven't gotten there yet. Any push down mechanisms for moving mechanisms to use with it? I don't know what that means.
I think he means like buttons, like
it-
remember in Portal, like that you can put a box on. a
Oh
button.
yeah.
Yeah, I was just saying like you're gonna use like buttons basically to.
Yeah. I'm thinking that'll be pretty cool to like launch a block through something and yeah, pressure plates kind of dealio. I'm hoping. And yes, Andrew, at the moment, there is a maximum rewind time. At the moment, it's just set to 5 seconds. That seems really short. So, and Bracky, he suggests like a small time because in his example, he had like 25 blocks, and 25 blocks recording 40 positions a second, like really adds up to like 150,000 positions every second. But I'm gonna only have like a couple objects at a time recording, so it should be way better or
I have
way
this
less expensive.
I have this tool that builds a skyscraper out of blocks, and I had a gun that knocked it over, and you could rewind time and have the whole thing come back together again.
That's pretty cool.
It was. I'll see if I can find it, and I'll show you the demo sometime. Okay, moving on. How about Matt Harzuski? You're here, right?
Yep. Let me get my screen share going here. So, everyone can see it?
Yep.
All right. So, I did give up on the shader graph thing, downgrade the project, and just went back and using the shader that Sebastian Legg wrote because not being able to bring in as an input an array of floats is just not going to work for this application. I don't know why it's so limited, but anyway,
I think that's I think that's a good idea. Shader graph's a beast.
But anyway, so you can do this now. It's got a collider on it and texturing.
Very
So
good.
you can adjust the heights of the different texture layers, and it will paint them on and blend them. Like you can see the snow kind of seamlessly transitions into the other there.
That snow looks
cool.
really good, that transition.
Yeah, that's like key to making realistic looking terrain is to not have seams.
Yeah, like
But
down
that-
here you can see I don't have the blending on. The threshold's at 0, so it's kind of a hard line and it doesn't look very good. If I turn the blend factor up, then it will do the other instead.
Actually, that can be a feature if you're doing like a shoreline.
Yeah,
You know,
I'm sure I'll use it later probably.
If you're, you then put a water object in at that level and, then it makes sense to have an abrupt transition. So having the option to do it one way or the other is probably a good thing.
Yeah. I'm not entirely sure how water is going to end up working. I'm kind of thinking that you'll have like a texture for like the bed of the, and then have like an intersecting like water plane probably. I think is how it would probably be best done. Because if you want to have like the water be like, a separate.
So this is infinite terrain. So you're moving along across the terrain.
Yeah.
And so you just have to do the same kind of tiling thing where you had some water objects that you moved for. You had one in front of you, one behind you, one to the right and to the left. And as you moved off one side, you moved the other one over there. I don't know. You can work out. It's similar to building the terrain that you could have a water object that moved with you.
Yeah. Once I finish through the tutorial, I'm probably I'll figure that out. Also, I want to have like trees that are placed. I figure I can just kind of sample random polygons, get the normal, and then spawn the model onto that basically.
Somewhere I saw an infinite terrain that had objects in it. I can't remember where I saw it, but it had like houses scattered throughout the world. And as you moved along, it generated them. As I recall, it generated them in the same place. Even though the terrains were different, it generated the houses always in the same. I can't remember. I've done so many tutorials, I don't know. Questions, comments, suggestions for Matt?
It seems like a couple weeks ago, I feel like you were saying you were having a problem where like the two tiles next to each other, they weren't like sharing the same purling noise exactly. And in your demo there, it kind of looked like off in the distance, there is like, it looks like you could see under some textures of the mountains. Is that still a problem?
Yeah, from what I've heard, it gets fixed in a later video, but what was basically happening is when there's a level of detail, so chunks that are near you have more polygons per chunk than ones that are in the distance. So even though they're overlapping the purlin noise to correct seams, they don't line up still because the polygon count is not the same, so they're going to end up being different.
That makes sense. That's
what if you just turned off level of detail and had them all at the same level of detail? Because whenever whoever did this tutorial, they were dealing with weaker hardware. I mean, it'd be worth testing the actual savings that you're getting from doing the LOD, which is making artifacts that are unpleasant.
Yeah.
And just turn it off, or make it less severe, or make it only happen when, I don't know, you adjust those distances that the LOD kicks in on, because it does trigger as you get near the boundary. It triggers the LOD to go to high res, and if you just made it to it triggered that closer when you're further from the boundary so that you don't see it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Thing I'd try would be turning it off. Let our high test hardware handle the extra polygons.
Yeah. I was just looking to see if I could just do that quickly, but it was throwing an error, so I probably look into it more closely than just.
And the other solution is fog.
Yeah, but I think fog's a good solution anyway, because it's just you can count on it looking nice as long as it's in the distance. So
Yeah.
it's
I have one more question. I've got no clue how any of this stuff works. You can just be like, no, that's not possible. But kind of like how Minecraft has biomes is it possible to have like different biomes where you're sampling different kinds of Perlin noise where it's like more flat or more mountainous? Is that possible?
hypothetically, but I would have to like have like a lot more configurable things and stored data to pull it off. But yeah,
Right.
you could definitely so like everything's like has like these variables you can play with to change like the height multiplier and how it samples the Perlin noise and stuff, and it will create different effects. So you can create like different like scriptable objects for different biomes and have it draw from like pick a biome first and then do that. But you have to figure architect stuff, and I don't know
It
if I want
does sound very complicated. I just didn't
But
know
yeah,
if like that was at all possible.
it's absolutely possible. It's just a matter of whether I want to like spend the time to
I wouldn't
do
put
it.
that on you. I was just that's
Yeah.
cool.
For this,
Pretty
probably
cool,
no,
though.
but it would be cool.
Yeah.
Beach biome or something that has like more sand and stuff.
Any other questions? Comments, suggestions? That's very cool. I mean, the procedural terrain with threading and infinite terrain. These are all high test features that you've got going here. So we've got Dorothy and Forrest left. Who wants to go first? I'll let you guys pick.
Doesn't matter to me. I can go or he can go.
All right, go ahead then, Dorothy.
Okay, I don't have super amount to show today. I've been busy with a lot of things. But I have a I have a UI menu for I don't have it maximizing. Looks ugly when it's not maximized. A UI menu for item pickup, and it's set up to pick up items, but I don't have items set up to be picked up.
Okay.
Part of it. And then I stopped on the animation because it was becoming quite a large problem. I was like, let me get everything else working first. So as you can see, he moves, but he doesn't do much. He just is a picture that moves around. And then I started to set up an item to be picked up. And as you can see, this little tiny flower right here. It's just not done yet. So it disappears immediately because I want when you pick it up, it goes away, but it's not fully set up. So when I start it, it just immediately disappears. And that's just because I haven't fully finished setting it up.
Okay. That's
yeah,
good though.
It's just small progress. I'm excited for break to come and then I'll have time to make bigger progress than this.
Aren't we all? So I think last week somebody suggested that a simple animation that might preserve your different your different attachments, your hats and boots and so forth, would be to just kind of squish the character so that as it moved around, it kind of squished. Have you explored that avenue at all?
A little bit, not too much. I was having that error before, so I kind of just got rid of the thing that was causing the error because it was taking a lot of time trying to fix the error. And I was like, I'll deal with that on break because I'll have plenty of time. And right now I want to have some progress other than I've been looking at animation and trying to fix the error I currently have.
Okay, good. Any comments, questions, suggestions for Dorothy and her duck? Okay, Forrest, you're pride of place here with the last.
Great. I actually have some exciting stuff to show off today. It's not a ton of code, but it lays a lot of groundwork. Also, real quick, I can just show what I was talking about with the pivot settings. So this is my sprite editor. This is where my pivot is located currently. You can move it around and that will change the center of the sprite.
Yeah.
And I just have it way over here because it's going to help me. Oh no. Show this off. So my guy moves really fast in the single person mode, but in multiplayer, it's not, it's like much slower. I don't really know why. So the crossbow, see how it's kind of oriented off of my character, but it is a child of my character. So it's still using the same position. It's just oriented different. This is an enemy that I designed. So the coding that I did this week was to create a dashing enemy that also has an aggro range. So now this character no longer looks at the nearest player unless that player is within range. And then once you're within range, it's going to dash at you and then have a small cooldown and then dash at you again, as long as there is a player in range. And when you're in multiplayer, it will pick between the characters. I can show that real quick. See, much slower when you're in the multiplayer.
Is that communication lag, or what do you think is slowing it down?
I don't really know. It might be something I want to look into, but currently I'm not sure what's causing that. But as you can see, the bull character will still pick the closest enemy before dashing at them. And then again, when there's no enemy within range, if I can get them out of range, it will stop dashing at them.
Very cool.
So this script, I could actually just show off a little bit. Basically just looks for a closest player using this method down here, which checks each player in a list of players and looks for the closest distance. If it finds the closest distance, it's going to check if the closest distance is within the aggro limit. And if it's not, it's just going to return a null. And then that is going to allow the enemy to target a player. And basically what's happening is you have a couple variables. You have your dash cooldown, you have your dash length, and you can set different speeds for your dash speed and your move speed. So one thing that's really cool about this is I can totally repurpose this to create my AoE enemy as well. I'm just going to have the move speed be like 3 and then have the dash speed be 0. And so when the character would be like quote unquote dashing, it's actually just going to be doing its attack and stopped completely. And I can show off how that works. Oh, except I'll probably have to do some rework of the code because currently it's just walking forward even if there's not anyone in range. But what should be happening is it's going to have these like brief stops that you can adjust the period of while moving unless it's in one of those brief stops.
Cool.
Another thing that I did is I enabled this, and it's a little bit easier to see on the multiplayer. I enabled the dash on the player. So when you hit shift, you can move a lot faster too, which is very useful for dodging this bull enemy, for example. And so the main problem with my script is it's currently a mono behavior, which I need to shift to a network behavior. How it's kind of working right now is on each screen, the Minotaur is calculating locally and then moving locally. What I'd like to be happening is just the server to calculate the Minotaur's position and then transfer that to all clients.
Yep.
So that's my next step.
Okay.
So that's what I have for today.
That's very cool. Any comments, questions, suggestions?
You probably just mentioned it there at the end, but I did notice during your demo, it looked like the bowl got kind of out of sync. Is that what you were referring to, the mono behavior?
Between the two screen, is that you
Yeah.
mean between the two screens? Yeah, that
Yeah.
so currently, yeah, it's being calculated on each screen, so it's not the same Minotaur across games,
So-
and so
okay.
people will see totally different behavior if there's any slight discrepancies in the updates.
That makes sense.
It would seem that it would seem that any AIs that you're going to have would want to be server controlled.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. And you know, then just their behavior broadcast to the clients. And yeah, that makes sense. Okay, so any other comments, questions, suggestions? Well, those were all really good. So I'm, as usual, pleased with you guys. So let me show you what I got for today here. Let me clean this up. So the issue I was dealing with was projectiles, in specifics, an arrow. And you know, if we have a laser weapon that shoots a straight line, and aiming it's pretty easy. You put the reticule on the object, you press the button, and it, you know, it destroys whatever you're pointed at. But with projectile weapons, ones that incorporate our rigid body that throw objects in a parabolic path, they're a lot harder to aim. And so I wanted to set up an aiming system for projectile weapons, and the arrow is the example that I'm using here. So, of course, if we're going to aim, we need a reticule, and reticules are really easy with the UI. You put some sprite in an image that's set to be at 000 in a screen overlay canvas with all the anchors at the center, and that automatically puts your thing right at the center. And the goal here is to have our projectile hit the point that we aim at with that reticule. And so we're going to do some physics to calculate this trajectory. So we've got uniform gravity of minus 9.81 meters per second squared. This is Unity's default. You can, of course, fiddle with it. And we're going to think in the horizontal, which is the XZ plane, and in the vertical, which of course in Unity is Y, left-handed coordinate system, just to confuse things. In X and Z, there's no acceleration. So our object moves in X and Z with constant velocity. So calculating its position as a function of time is simple. If we know where it started, how fast it was going, we just have this little linear equation that moves the object with time. In the Y direction, we have gravity. So the equation's a little more complicated. We have this 1/2 GT squared term, the acceleration. And so what we need to know in order to hit our target is where the target is. That would be X and Y at T, and how fast it has to start off going, Vx0, Vy0, and Vz0 in order to get to the particular target. Another way of thinking of this is that we're specifying the speed at which the bullet is leaving and the angle that we're aiming at. This is how one aims things in with projectiles. So change in horizontal position, this little parabolic path is actually two-dimensional. It's not three-dimensional because it stays in a plane. So we really don't have to worry about the XZ components. What we really have to worry about is the horizontal component, which I'm going to call just XZ to encapsulate that. What we'll do is we'll point our character in the direction of the target, and so we really only need to think of the speed and the angle. So the change in horizontal position basically comes from that little linear equation, x of t equal x0 plus vt. So I can solve this for the horizontal velocity is the change in horizontal position divided by the time of flight. Its change in vertical position is that little parabolic equation. Again, solving it for y, for v and y, it's the change in height divided by flight time minus a half t, which is from that quadratic term. So what we need is t, the time of flight. So I've got a little function, throw velocity, that's going to generate the velocity that I need to hit my target. And so I've got a target position and the origin, which is where my projectile is coming from, presumably the gun tip. I, of course, have the distance between these as the magnitude of to target. And my time of flight is that just the distance divided by a nominal projectile speed. We'll see that this is ultimately going to be modified a little bit. It, in general, ends up being slightly smaller because we're adding in a y component to get this thing to be where it needs to be. So I form a vector to target xz that's just this vector between the targets, the three-dimensional vector between the targets. And I just zero out the y component of that. So that gives me delta h. That's the xz is the magnitude of that to target xz vector with its y component zeroed out. So that's the horizontal distance. And the y, of course, is just the to target dot y component, this vector between the origins. So now I have the delta h and I have the delta y, and I very simply can form my velocity in the y direction has to be that delta y over time of flight minus a half g times the time of flight, and my initial velocity in the xz plane is just xz over time of flight. So now I have my components of velocity. So I want to, there's a little trick here. I'm going to take that to target xz and normalize it. So this is the vector in the xz plane, and I'm normalizing it so I have a unit vector, and I'm going to then scale that by the velocity that I want it to have in xz. So result now has a magnitude in the horizontal plane of v0 xz. That's the horizontal velocity that I wanted to throw this thing with. And then I just take the y component of that and assign that to be the y velocity that I calculated back here. So now my result vector is a combination of those two, the v0xz and the v0y. And speed and angle here are just kind of diagnostics for my UI to tell me how fast I was actually firing the bullet and what angle it got fired at. And that, of course, involved inverse tangents of the different components, to inverse tangents to get the angle and conversion from radians to degrees. And that result is then returned. So let me show you that in action here. We've got a little character who's got a gun on them. And I've got the reticule pointing out into the world. And I think the Alt key fires it. And I think I put a little marker out there for the point that I'm hitting here. And of course, here's my tower that I can blow up with my bullets. And if this is done with this targeting is done with a ray cast. And so if there's nothing in the scene, it just fires the bullet. And these bullets have a finite lifetime, and at the end they blow up. So those aren't actually ending up hitting the ground. They're just blowing up in the air. So, so that's all cool, and it all works just fine. in terms of firing this, we're going to instantiate the projectile, get its rigid body, and I use add force to accelerate this little object. And if you read the documentation, there's a force mode that's called velocity change. And so this adds an instant velocity change to the rigid body, ignoring its mask. So basically, when I add force at the throw velocity with force mode velocity change, it's kind of instantly making the rigid body go at that velocity. I don't actually know why I did it that way and why I didn't just assign the rigid body's velocity to be throw velocity. That would probably work as well. So somewhere, of course, in my wanderings through the things that are available for Unity, I found this little character, the archer. And the archer seemed like the perfect character for a projectile weapon because it has this animation where it draws an arrow out of its quiver and it pulls it back and it fires it. And so, you know, it just was natural for this projectile. And so I needed to write a motor to drive the character around. It apparently is one of the older characters because its animations don't have root motion. So I ended up having to use the character controller.move function to drive it around. It had a bunch of animations, idle, run, and attack. And the attack is this nice draw the arrow and shoot thing. It had a get hit and a die that I didn't use. And I tried 3 or 4 different versions of a controller and finally decided to orient the archer to align with the camera view so that as I turn the camera, the archer responds to that. And I limited movement to forward and backwards, although there's actually a horizontal, a strafing move too, but there's no animation for the strafing, so it looks kind of stupid. I wanted to use the Cinemachine camera system. I have a single main camera that is controlled by the various virtual cameras that I'm going to use. I'll show you those cameras in a minute here. But in the character controller, the start function catches the main camera's transform. Fired is set to false. We'll talk about that later. That's how one triggers the gun. And I get, of course, I cache the character controller, caching the animator as well. There are public variables trigger and fired that are handled elsewhere. I'll show you them in a minute. And update handles the input movement, and it assigns the speed to the animator. If the attack is active, we don't want to be moving the camera. So fired tells that we have fired an arrow and we're in the process of going through our shooting of the arrow. And so we don't accept input during the attack animation. So if we're not attacking, we get the vertical and horizontal axes. I'm using the horizontal axis, but because I'm orienting my character with the camera, it's really superfluous. And this all goes into the animator's speed parameter, and it's worth looking at the animator here. Don't save. So here's my little archer, and the animator for the archer is pretty simple. It has an idle animation. It has an idle animation, and it has a run and a mirrored run backwards. This is the same animation, but with a -1 speed. So this is running forward with a speed of 1, and this is running backwards with a speed of -1. So my character accurately moves forward and backwards. The attack animation is over here, and it's triggered from any state. So it's not like we have to transition from the various runs and idles. We just transition in from any state. And I believe the archer attack is one of those ones that has an exit time. So this animation has to run fully through before it returns to the idle state, and then we can start running around again. So it's not terribly complex animator, but and the parameter is the speed that it has to go. So orienting it, I've got my horizontal and vertical axes that I'm scaling by the run speed, time delta time. I get the camera's forward vector, and I form a quaternion look rotation in that direction, normalizing, setting the y component 0 so that my vector is in the horizontal, and then normalizing it because look rotation wants a unit vector, and that forms my rotation. And I just, if I don't bother with slurping, I just move it directly to that rotation. And then the desired move vector is the vertical axis scaled by run speed and time delta time times the camera forward vector. And here's that strafing HCam right. And because I'm using the move, I also have to handle gravity with the time.delta time and the vector up, and then the character controller move by that desired vector moves my character around. And of course, because it didn't have root motion, I had to adjust the speed to kind of make the steps work appropriately. I don't have any falling animation, so it just comes down. But my little character walks around, and its direction is controlled by the camera, and the strafing doesn't do anything, but it does have the strafing ability. So that's the motor for this thing. So back here somewhere, we've got the exposed variables. True to start attack and fired if it's already attacking. So if the trigger is true and it has not been fired yet, because we're not going to fire it immediately when the animation starts, we're going to fire it when it's the right time within the animation. So we've got these two. If trigger is true and fired is false, then we set trigger to false. We throw a ray cast out of our camera from the camera's position. We get the origin and target that we're going to use in our script to calculate the velocity. So there's origin and target for the get velocity. I make the transform look at that target. This lines up my player so that it's pointing at the target, because the target.y is my y position. And I set the bool on the animator fire to true. Now the animator, let me go back to the animator here. The animator, the transition from any state is when that fire parameter is set to true. This is the transition from any state is when fire is true. So this is going to start the attack animation that is this drawing of the bow and firing it. Otherwise, of course, we set that to false. So here's where it gets kind of interesting, because in what we're going to do is on the attack animation, or on the animator, we have a state machine behavior, and state machine behaviors are things that happen during a particular animation. So this is something that goes on the it's attached to the attack animation, I think. Where is it attached? It says where it is. Oh, I know where it is. In the attack animation, I've got this fire projectile. This is the state machine behavior. So it's attached to the attack animation. It's got a little probe that is my visible object that I'm going to put down there. And here you see the probe as the exposed variable, and then everything else here is private and calculated internally. So state machine behaviors have a number of built-in functions that if you make a new one, it has all of them populated. They're just empty. I'm going to show you enter, update, and exit. Enter is when the animation starts, exit is when the animation ends, and update is every frame while you're in the animation. And so on state enter, the public void on state enters come populated with an animator's state info, and its layer index. So if you need to use those things, they're all available here. So here on enter, I get the camera. I set fired to false. I get the motor on my animator's game objects. And so this is the archer's motor that is driving it around. I get the motor's game object transform, so that's the character transform, and I get the gun tip and all these different things that I'm pulling out of the character who has triggered this animation. And here's where I calculate the velocity. So I've got the projectile speed, and here's where I actually calculate what that initial velocity is to give me the parabolic profile. And I set that on the motor in that exposed variable fired. It's a Boolean that returns whether it has a velocity that satisfies the constraints. So calculate velocity does a raycast to hit the target. So it's again out of the camera position. It instantiates that probe if we want to see where we've hit the thing, and otherwise, well, it instantiates one if it needs one. Otherwise, if it's already got one, it doesn't. It gets the origin and target. The origin is the gun tip position that it got back before there, and the target is the hit point. It calls that throw velocity. That's modified a little bit. I forget what I changed in it. And then it assigns those different velocities, gives the projectile a speed, and rotates my character to point at the target, and returns the true or false if it didn't hit a target. Speed and angle are calculated here because I wanted them for the UI, but the UI is handled on the motor, so I passed them back to it, and also the time of flight. So that was all in the on state enter. So when we enter the state, it does all of this stuff, collecting information, calculating what it's hit, putting something out there, calculating the throw velocity, passing the information back to the motor, and returning the result. And so now we enter on state update. This one happens every frame while we're in the animator state. And part of the state info is the normalized time. So the normalized time goes from 0 to 1 as the animation plays. And so experimentally, I found the point at which in the animation, the little character releases the arrow, and it turned out to be at 0.55 of the normalized time. So in the on state update, as soon as the current time is greater than 0.55 and it has not yet fired, it sets fire to be true. It instantiates the projectile at the gun tip plus a little change forward with the gun tip's rotation. And it does this add force with the force mode velocity change, and that's what fires the bullet. And then in on state exit, we just set fire to be false, and we set motor fired to be false back on the character's motor, and we're done. So how do we trigger this? The trigger was set when trigger became true and it had not yet fired, and I'm going to do that in the context of my virtual cameras. Later, I'll do a full show about Cinema Machine, but I have 3 different cameras here. I have an aiming camera, I have the normal camera, and I have a camera for navigating tunnels. Normal is kind of an over-the-shoulder view that we frame it off center so that our character's kind of off to the side. Aiming switches to a telephoto camera where we don't see the character. We kind of move forward and are in telephoto. And tunnel just centers the camera behind the archer. This makes it easier to navigate in closed spaces. Let me demonstrate them for you, I think, here. So this is the over-the-shoulder kind of view. You notice the character is off to the left a little bit. And if I look at my virtual cameras here, the normal one has this window that you can put, you can move around the screen, and the camera's goal is to put its aim in the center of that. You can, whoops. With Cinema Machine, this is the soft zone where the camera is allowed to move around some. If I move my character a little to the, if I move my character, you can see that the spot that it's pointing at is not rigorously contained. And then there's the hard zone that it won't let that little yellow dot go out of. And when I aim, whoops, I aimed at my feet. When I aim at something, it shifts to the telephoto that moved the camera forward, and releasing it fires my little projectile. And this one, the aim camera, has a, whoops, has no forbidden zone, so it's rigorously aimed at that spot in the middle of the scene. It has no forbidden zone. And then there's the tunnel camera. How do I trigger the tunnel camera? T R, whoops. I forget how I trigger it. P. Oops, that's the bomb. I forget how
I don't think that was the button.
No, that's the bomb that blows up my tower. I forget what the trigger is to tunnel. I'll have to find that. But anyway, the way this works. So on the different cameras, the different virtual cameras have priorities. And the camera with the highest priority is the one, whoops, where am I? Let me stop here. So here are my three virtual cameras, aim, normal, and tunnel. And I think tunnel is the one that has the script on it. Nope. Oh, toggle on key press left control. Yeah, okay. So these cameras have priority. And so this one's priority 9. Normal is priority 10, and aim is priority 9. So by default, the normal camera is going to be in control. And in scripting, I'm going to change those priorities, and that's what switches which camera is in control of the main camera. The main camera here has this little icon on it that says that it has a Cinemachine brain, and the Cinemachine brain is what's responding to these different cameras. I also have an overhead camera that is not controlled by Cinemachine. It's just a regular camera. So this is done all with the boost. So I've got an activation key, left control here. I've got an amount that I'm going to boost my priority. I've got the reticule that I turn on when I go to aiming. I've got the character's motor. And I needed to access the Cinemachine virtual camera base. This is the base component that all of the virtual cameras extend. So we have to this long big string, and I access the component, and it gives me the VCam, the virtual camera that I want. Each of the cameras have the appropriate script on them for doing whatever it is they want to do. This one activates on key press, that's the aimer, and the tunnel activates on a toggle for left control. So having gotten the virtual camera, I make sure it's not null, that I actually have a camera of that ilk, and if I've pressed this activation key button, and if I'm not boosted, I just raise my priority by that boost amount, 10, which clearly puts it over all the other cameras, and so that's the camera that's then in control. And when I release that key, it goes back down, it reduces the priority, it says boosted to false. And here's where I trigger the fire. Here's where I access the character's motor exposed variable trigger and set it to true. And that's what starts that whole attack, animation, firing the bullet, and all that is done in the motor. And I also turn the reticule on and off, just by setting it active. The tunnel is for navigating close spaces. I like this over the shoulder view. Let me maximize here so we can see it. I like the over the shoulder view. Oops. But when we got down into this big building here, let me fire the bullet here. Whoops. Just to see that I can. But when I got down into this tower of buildings and I started down the hallways, the over the shoulder view was kind of awkward. And so it's left control switches now to that tunnel view. So now I'm directly behind the character and it's a little easier to navigate in here. That bomb that blows up this big tower, I can blow it up while I'm in here and all kinds of bad things happen. But it does seem to make this really interesting topography that now I'm lost in this maze of collapsed blocks. And I have the N key that I can press that No, I don't have it on this character, but I have an N key that I can press that pushes everything away. And of course, we can still fire bullets in here and do all kinds of stuff. So all of that's very fun. And that one was just an activate key where I have this toggle on boosted, so I can toggle back and forth. So it's not while I hold the key down, it's when boosted is toggled back and forth. And of course, there's some other scenes here to play around in. I've got, in addition to the tower, I've got 2 minutes. You have to wait. I've got 2 minutes. Let me show it. I have this procedural tower building device, and I have a pyramid building device. My little character, because it's a character controller character, there's a step setting so that I move too fast and knock the thing over, but there is a step that you can set, and of course we can fire a bunch of arrows over and knock down the big tower here. Whoops. So had a lot of fun with this one. So, and I'll stop sharing there. And any questions? You're all just stunned. All right, well, it's 1:49, 1 minute of class left. So if there are no questions, I'll see you all next week. Oh, no, next week is break. That's when you're going to do all your work. And I'll see you in 2 weeks. Okay, bye.